Thanks for tuning in to Operation Revenge. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now let's begin the story. The envelope showed up on a rainy Tuesday, buried in a stack of flyers and bills. It had my brother's handwriting, that annoyingly elegant art school cursive that even now made me grit my teeth. No return address, no note, just a thick ivory program and an RSVP card with my full name, Jordan Elaine Vega, printed in embossed serif. I stared at it for a long time. I hadn't heard from Julian in nearly 10 years. Not since the scandal. Not since I walked out of the house we both grew up in. Trailed by cameras, my mother's voice in my ear calling me dramatic, hysterical. Words that still made me flinch when I heard them, even on TV. And now this. A last-minute invite to his award ceremony at the estate in Rhinebeck. I didn't know what infuriated me more, the timing, the gall, or the fact that I was actually considering going. My name is Jordan Vega. I'm 43 years old, and I used to be the top sports agent on the East Coast, until I wasn't. The estate hadn't changed much. Same wraparound porch, same carved lions flanking the front steps. The last time I was here, it had been crawling with press and whispered questions about forged contracts and misplaced loyalty. Now it was crawling with caterers and florists. Isabel, my mother, opened the door like she hadn't seen me in a decade, which, to be fair, she hadn't. She blinked once, gave me a cool up-and-down scan, and said, "You're early." I wasn't. "Your room's upstairs," she added. "The attic." We had to make space for the other guests. The attic smelled like mothballs and forgotten Christmas. The bed was a creaky twin shoved between storage boxes labeled Julian early press clippings and Mom gala dresses. I dropped my bag beside a crate of dusty wine bottles and tried to shake off the feeling that I had made a mistake. Dinner was worse than I expected. Round tables arranged across the east lawn. Strung lights, live jazz trio. The kind of calculated elegance Julian loved. Everyone was dressed like they were attending a Vanity Fair shoot. My navy pantsuit, sleek, expensive, but 6 seasons out of step, didn't earn me a second glance. Correction, it earned me plenty of glances. Just not the kind I liked. There was no seat card with my name, no introductions when guests toasted Julian's brilliance or Isabel's incredible poise during the family's difficult period. I sat at the edge of a table near the caterer's tent, pretending not to notice the way 2 guests whispered behind their hands after asking me, "So, what do you do now?" Julian never looked at me. Not once. He laughed loudly, posed for pictures, kissed Isabel's cheek during the speeches. If he was aware of my presence, he made sure not to show it. By dessert, I was cold, angry, and tired of pretending to enjoy the vintage rosé someone had clearly picked out just to impress the press. This wasn't about forgiveness. It was about reminding them I still existed. And as I sat there watching my brother bask in a spotlight I helped build, I realized something with total clarity. I didn't come here to be welcomed. I came here to take back what was mine. The house had always been covered in photos. Family ski trips, awkward school portraits, Julian in a chef's coat grinning beside plates I used to bankroll. It used to be balanced. My childhood face had a place beside his. I remembered a photo of me in my college softball uniform, grinning mid-swing, framed above the staircase. Now? Gone. The wall leading up to the second floor was a timeline of Julian's rise. His first food truck, his first TV spot, a blurry photo of him laughing with Anthony Bourdain. On the far right, a smiling portrait of Isabel accepting some award for her women's charity. Not a single trace of me. It was like I'd been cropped out of the family on purpose. I paused near the banister, fingers brushing a tiny hole in the wall where a thumbtack had once been. I knew what photo had hung there. Dad took it on a disposable camera, me and Julian, both sweaty and sunburned, holding up a trophy from a backyard tennis match we turned into a yearly tradition. It was gone now, not replaced. Just gone. Downstairs, the house buzzed with the kind of rich people chatter I used to tune out in hotel bars. Talk of wine imports and Michelin stars. I made my way toward the formal dining room, where preparations for the gala were underway. That's when I saw it, a clipboard left on the buffet. I wasn't snooping, not exactly. But the moment I saw the seating chart, I knew I had to look. My eyes scanned the neatly typed names, the little arrows, the circles. Isabel Vega, front center. Julian Vega, obviously, at the main table. Donovan Blake, the food critic, Elise Marlowe, retired journalist, and then Jordan Vega, crossed out in thick red ink. Underneath it, in different handwriting, a replacement. Marjorie Holtz, family friend. Marjorie Holtz, that woman who used to live 2 streets down. The one who once said I was too aggressive for a girl after a high school debate meet. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not sadness, not even anger, just something hard and cold. A quiet realization that they weren't just pretending I wasn't here. They wanted me erased. At dinner that night, Isabel was in rare form. She sat poised at the head of the table, pearls and posture both immaculate, sipping from a crystal glass like she was royalty. "So, Jordan," said an older man I vaguely recognized from years back. One of Julian's early investors, I think. "Still working in, what was it? PR question mark." There was a glint in his eye. He knew damn well I wasn't. Before I could answer, Isabel leaned in with a smile that had nothing soft in it. "She's between pursuits," she said lightly, cutting into her steak. "The sports world can be so unstable." "Can't it, darling?" The table chuckled. Julian said nothing. I stared at him. He didn't look up, just twisted his wine glass, eyes fixed on his plate like I didn't exist. That's when I understood the truth. I hadn't just lost my career. I had been rewritten out of the story, and they expected me to sit quietly and applaud. The cemetery was quiet, the way it always was on weekday mornings. Too early for visitors, too late for maintenance crews. The sky hung low and gray, threatening rain but not quite committing. I parked near the edge of the old section and walked the gravel path, my boots crunching with every step. Dad's headstone stood under the same crooked maple, still chipped on the left corner from a storm years ago. I knelt beside it, brushing a few stray leaves from the base. "Hey," I murmured, like he was still listening. Maybe he was, the only person who ever believed I was built for more than applause, who never asked me to wear a dress or smile more or act grateful. When the scandal broke and the press turned on me, it was Dad who stood beside me at the courthouse, who told me that the truth didn't need a crowd. It needed a spine. I sat for a while in the silence, thinking about that last week before he passed. He was already thin then, frail from chemo, but still sharp. He had looked me straight in the eye and said, "Integrity doesn't come with a trophy, Joe. Most of the time it comes with silence, and sometimes you have to carry that weight alone." I remember nodding, pretending to be strong, pretending it didn't hurt that even in our own house, that silence had become a cage. "You wouldn't have let them erase me," I said softly. "You knew what they were doing." I don't know how long I sat there, but I heard footsteps behind me before I saw him. "Didn't think you'd show," said a familiar voice. I turned. Luke Calder stood a few paces back, hands in the pockets of a black wool coat, face older but still unmistakable, the kind of handsome that made magazine editors swoon and corporate sponsors line up. Once a rising athlete, once my client. More. "I didn't think you would," I said. He walked forward slowly, stopping just beside the grave. "Wasn't here for the event. Heard you were back." "Julian send you to check on me?" Luke smirked, but there was something tired in his eyes. "Julian doesn't check on people. You know that." I stood. "So why are you here?" He looked down at the headstone. "Because 10 years ago you were the only one telling the truth. I didn't forget that." I searched his face, trying to read him. "You vanished. After everything. No call. No statement." I was told to stay quiet. He hesitated. "By your brother, by Isabel. Said it would all go away if no one stirred it up. And you listened. I was young and selfish. I thought maybe if I kept my head down, I could still have a career." He looked at me. "But you made it happen, Jordan. Everything Julian has, his image, his investors, they all came from what you built." I crossed my arms. "So why now?" He gave a slight shrug. "Because I'm tired of pretending he did it alone." Then, before turning to go, he added, "If you're ready to speak, I'll back you." And just like that, he walked away. No apology, no promises. Just that one loaded offer. I looked back at my father's grave. Maybe silence had protected them all. But mine? Mine had cost me everything. The cafe was tucked between a laundromat and a bookstore, a quiet little spot Elise used to swear had the best espresso north of the city. She was already there when I arrived. 2 empty cups in front of her and a pen in her hand, spinning it slowly as she watched me walk through the door. Elise Marlowe had the kind of presence that made rooms quieter. Decades in journalism had etched sharp lines around her eyes, but her mind was still razor clean. She stood, gave me a quick hug, then sat back down before I could change mine. "I was wondering when you'd show," she said, reaching for her cup. I sat across from her, still not sure why I'd come. Maybe because Dad had trusted her. Maybe because she never once asked me if I was okay during the scandal. She just assumed I'd fight, and she'd be there when I did. "I went to see him," I said quietly. She nodded. "He always said you'd be the one to come back first." There was a pause. Then Elise leaned forward, voice low. "So tell me, why now?" I sighed, brushing my thumb against the edge of the ceramic. "They sent an invitation. No note, no apology, just a seat at the table I was erased from." Her lips pressed into a tight line. "Sounds like Isabel. And Julian." She didn't argue, just reached into her coat pocket and slid something across the table. A small black audio recorder. The kind you could slip into a jacket without anyone noticing. "Elise, you came back," she said. "That means you want something. So stop pretending you don't." I looked at the recorder. Small, plain, dangerous. "I'm not looking for revenge," I muttered. "I know," she said. "But clarity, that you want. And you deserve it." I shook my head. "I'm not like them. I don't want to trap people." Elise leaned back, folding her arms. "You won't have to. Just listen. People like your mother, they don't hide what they are. They perform it. All you have to do is give them a stage." I stared at the device. "When?" "Tomorrow. Brunch. The family only one. No cameras, no press. Just the inner circle." I hesitated, but something inside me and something cold and quiet clicked into place. "What am I supposed to do with it?" "Let them talk," Elise said. "Then we'll figure out what to do next." She slid a napkin across the table with the words, "The truth isn't revenge, it's release." I tucked the recorder into my coat pocket, and for the first time in years, I walked out ready to hear my family as they really were. Elise's apartment still smelled like cinnamon and old paper. The walls were lined with books, some with her notes still wedged between pages. And the table between us was cleared, save for a laptop, a mug of tea, and the recorder I had handed her only minutes ago. She clicked play. The first few seconds were background noise, forks against porcelain, light laughter. Isabel's voice, bright and brittle. Well, Jordan always had a flair for the dramatic. I suppose it's fitting she came back for the cameras. Pity there weren't any. A pause. Someone, probably Julian, chuckled. "I mean, really," Isabel continued. "She walks in like a guest star, 10 years late, and still expects a seat at the table, after everything." "She's probably looking for sympathy," said another voice. Julian. "People like her always are." My jaw clenched. Elise didn't look at me, just tapped the arrow key, fast-forwarding to the next spike in the audio. Isabel again. "She was blacklisted for a reason, Julian. You know that. The industry doesn't forgive women who try to play hardball. She was lucky she got out when she did." "Not everyone needs to know that," Julian said softly. "Let it stay buried." "You're so naive," Isabel replied. "That girl should be grateful we didn't fight her on the estate. Speaking of which," there was a rustling of papers, the sound of a glass being set down. "Did Marcus send the consent forms yet?" she asked. Julian's voice quieter. "He emailed. But he wants to verify the co-ownership again before we finalize anything." "He won't find anything. The papers we filed under her name, those were signed, weren't they?" A beat of silence. "Mom," Julian said, low. "They weren't real." More silence. Then Isabel's voice, sharper. "Don't be dramatic. They served a purpose. She hasn't touched that land in a decade. She forfeited her share the moment she walked away. But legally, she doesn't matter, Julian." I reached across the table and paused the recording. My fingers were shaking. Elise looked at me carefully. "You okay?" I swallowed hard. "They're selling the estate." She nodded. "Soon, probably after the gala. That's why they invited you now. To make sure the appearance of harmony was there, just in case anyone questioned the paperwork later." I leaned back, the weight of it all settling in. My father's land. His home. The last piece of him that hadn't been carved up and sold off. And I was still tied to it, still on the deed, still co-owner, something Isabel had tried to bury with fake consent forms and Julian's cowardice. They weren't just trying to push me out, I said quietly. They were trying to make sure I couldn't come back. Elise reached for her phone. I already sent the file to a lawyer friend of mine. He pulled the deed this morning. You're still on it, Jordan. Half owner. Legally and officially. I stared at the recorder. The soft hiss of paused silence. Then I laughed, bitter and hollow. They didn't just erase me, they tried to steal from me. Elise nodded. And now? You have proof. And just like that, the truth was no longer mine to carry alone. Marcus Trent still kept the same office. Same framed sports memorabilia on the walls. Same sleek furniture and glass desk. The same one I'd leaned against a decade ago, reading over contracts that could have launched empires. I hadn't seen him since the week everything fell apart. He stood as I walked in. Older now, grayer at the temples, but his handshake was still firm. Jordan, he said. Didn't expect to hear from you again. Not after how they... I'm not here for nostalgia, Marcus. He nodded, gesturing to the chair across from his. Fair enough. I sat. The air between us felt tight, like we were both remembering things neither of us wanted to say out loud. I need to know if the original agent contract I signed with Julian still exists, I said. The one we filed before his first endorsement deals, before Isabel got involved. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He just opened his drawer and pulled out a thick black folder. I always knew you might come back, he said, placing it on the desk. And I knew Isabel would make sure you couldn't. I stared at the folder. She said the contract was voided, that Julian backed out. I looked for it after the fallout, but it was gone. Because she asked me to pull it. Quietly, Marcus replied. Said it was a formality, that you wanted it taken out of rotation for legal reasons. My stomach turned. I never said that. I know. I figured that out later. But by then, she'd had me transfer all related documentation to a private archive. Not destroyed, just buried. He flipped the folder open and slid it toward me. Inside were pages of early licensing deals. Documents with my name on every signature line. Contracts I had negotiated. Endorsement paths I had created. Even the first brand consultation Julian had leveraged to get his now famous TV pilot. All of it traced back to my firm. To me. She used your reputation to elevate his, Marcus said quietly. But she knew she couldn't risk you getting credit. So she buried everything that connected you to the launch of his brand. My fingers brushed over the faded ink. Emails, sign-off forms, investment memos, proof. And one letter stood out. A sponsorship inquiry from a beverage company addressed to me, thanking me for your role in connecting us with Mr. Julian Vega. Dated just weeks before the scandal broke. I sat back, the folder heavy in my lap. She wanted me gone, I whispered. Not just from the estate, from his narrative. She didn't just cut you out, Marcus said. She built him on top of your work. I looked up, meeting his eyes. Why didn't you say anything? Because I was a coward, he admitted. Because Isabel scares people in suits more than most boardrooms do. I closed the folder and stood. Well, I said, voice flat. She should be scared of me now. Marcus watched me go, not stopping me, not offering condolences. Just nodding like a man who finally knew whose side he was on. And I walked out with 10 years of truth under my arm. Proof that my legacy had never vanished. It had just been buried, until now. The rehearsal dinner was held at one of those impossibly expensive farm-to-table estates, with oversized chandeliers and servers who called every guest sir like they were royalty. I wore black, not a statement, just strategy. I didn't need to stand out. I just needed to be seen. But I wasn't even allowed past the front gate. Name? The man with the iPad asked, barely glancing at me. Jordan Vega, he scrolled. Then scrolled again. His brow furrowed. I don't have you on the list. I gave a thin smile. Check under family. Another scroll. Then he looked up, expression clipped. I'm sorry, ma'am. If you don't have an invitation, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside. I could feel the heat rise in my face. Not from embarrassment, from familiarity. This wasn't new. This was just another version of the cold shoulder Isabel had mastered years ago. I didn't move. Then she appeared, like clockwork. Hair smooth, pearls perfect, voice calm and poised. Jordan, Isabel said, as if she were surprised to see me. I didn't realize you planned to attend. I stared at her. Julian's rehearsal, family event. Why wouldn't I? She offered a small, pitying smile. This dinner is for his press circle, investors, and immediate collaborators. We wanted to keep it focused. Focused, I repeated. On rewriting history? Her smile didn't falter. Don't be unkind. You've already caused enough confusion showing up like this. You forged consent forms to sell property that doesn't belong to you, I said quietly. You locked me out of my own house, my own name. She stepped closer, lowering her voice but keeping her tone ice cold. You forfeited that when you ran from the mess you made, when you let the press define you. You were a liability, Jordan. And liabilities don't get invitations. That was it. I could have yelled. I could have caused a scene, but I didn't. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I looked past her, saw Julian laughing at a table with TV producers, a flute of champagne in hand. His jacket perfect, his smile practiced. He didn't look over, not once. So I nodded, not in defeat, in understanding. This was never about reconciliation. It was about erasure. Again, I turned around without another word and walked back to the car. The wind cut sharp through the trees, but I didn't feel cold. I felt clear. Back at Elise's apartment, I opened my laptop, connected the flash drive, and uploaded the documents Marcus had given me. Then I opened a new browser window and attached the recording file we'd pulled from brunch. Headline typed in bold. The architect in the shadows. What the Vega family tried to bury. No byline, no name, just a caption. When silence is forced, the truth must speak louder. Then I hit send. To every outlet that ever printed a lie about me. To every journalist who once called me a disgrace. The truth was out now, and none of them could lock it out. By morning, it was everywhere. The story had detonated like a dropped match in a dry field. Exclusive. New documents revealed Jordan Vega's role in Julian Vega's rise, and the family that buried her. Screenshots of the brunch recording were already viral. Audio snippets of Isabel calling me unstable and mocking my downfall were clipped into reels. One news blog ran a side-by-side. Julian at a red carpet event smiling beside Isabel. And me, years ago, at a charity sports auction, shaking hands with the same sponsors now backing Julian's brand. It was almost surgical, brutal, beautiful. And I hadn't said a single word to the press. Elise was on her third cup of coffee when she turned the laptop toward me. Number 4 trending topic on X. Just behind a celebrity divorce and a playoff upset. I blinked. Only number 4? Give it an hour. I sat back on her couch, my phone buzzing non-stop. Unknown numbers, blocked numbers. People from high school I hadn't heard from in 15 years suddenly texting, "I always believed in you." Cowards. I ignored every call. Isabel's charity website quietly went dark by noon. Their social media accounts wiped clean. Under review, read the official statement citing internal restructuring. Julian's PR team went silent, then scrambled. By late afternoon, 2 of his corporate sponsors announced they were reevaluating their partnerships in light of recent revelations. And then, finally, the break. Luke. He stepped in front of the fire without hesitation. A short video posted to his Instagram page. Calm, direct, and devastating. "I've stayed quiet for too long," he said into the camera. But Jordan Vega was not just my former agent. She was the reason I ever had a shot. And she's the reason Julian Vega ever stepped into a room full of sponsors who took him seriously. That was her work. That was her strategy. I was there. I saw it. And the way she was pushed out, erased, discredited, it wasn't just unethical. It was calculated. 10 minutes later, the video had over 200,000 views. By nightfall, it had crossed 1 million. Julian, nothing. No statement, no denial, just silence. And the longer he said nothing, the louder the world became. By midnight, think pieces started to roll out. The cost of image, why Jordan Vega deserves credit. Erasure isn't just emotional, it's legal, it's theft. The woman behind the empire. I didn't reply to a single interview request. I didn't need to. The truth was doing exactly what I'd never been allowed to. Speak. That night, I sat on Elise's balcony with a blanket over my shoulders. the city buzzing below, my phone face down beside me. I didn't need to look at it. Because for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't disgraced. I wasn't silent. I was heard. 3 days after the leak, the estate sale was officially frozen. Legal review pending. Isabel was removed from her charity board by unanimous vote. According to the news scroll at the bottom of the TV, Julian's cooking show had been placed on hiatus, a diplomatic phrase that meant no one wants to touch him until this all blows over. But it wasn't blowing over. It was settling in. And I hadn't stepped outside in 36 hours. Not because I was hiding, but because I didn't need to move. The world was finally spinning around me for once. That evening, just as the sun began to slide behind the row of buildings across the street, there was a knock at my apartment door. I knew who it was before I even opened it. Julian stood there alone. No publicist, no camera crew, no coat. Just him in a wrinkled button-down and tired eyes. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. "I thought you'd slam the door in my face," he said quietly. "I still might," I replied, but I stepped aside. He walked in like he hadn't been here before. Even though we shared bunk beds in this apartment once, during a rough patch our parents pretended never happened. I watched him take it in. The framed photo of Dad on the bookshelf, the news article Elise had printed and pinned on the fridge with a magnet that said, "Silence is a choice." He sat on the edge of the couch, leaning forward, elbows on knees. "I read the whole thing," he said. "Every word, every file good," I said, crossing my arms. I didn't know about the forged forms. I swear I believed him. That wasn't the part I needed to hear. "What about everything else?" I asked. He looked down. He hesitated. "That was me, or at least me trying to be what Mom wanted. She said you were dangerous to the brand, said you were too volatile, that you'd sink everything if I didn't cut you out. And you did." "I did," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I didn't even ask questions. I just let her push you out and told myself it was professional." I stared at him. This wasn't an apology. Not yet. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he continued. "I know I don't deserve that." "No," I said. "You don't. But is there any way forward?" he asked. "Any chance we rebuild something?" I sat across from him. Let the silence stretch long enough for him to squirm. "If you want something real," I said flatly, "start by returning what you stole. Credit, land, legacy. You give back what you took. You name names. And you stop pretending it all happened without me." He swallowed hard, then nodded slowly. "That's what it'll take." He stood. "Okay." And he left without a hug, without a handshake, without a single plea for grace. I shut the door behind him. Not in anger, but in peace. Weeks had passed since Julian's awkward attempt at reconciliation. The media storm had quieted. My name was no longer a headline, but the truth was still rippling through my family, through the industry, through every conversation Julian had once tried to control. The first court hearing for the estate sale was set for next month. The forged documents were under investigation. The press had started asking Julian real questions about his early success, questions he couldn't dodge anymore. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't scrambling to stay afloat. I wasn't pleading for acknowledgement. I was on solid ground. I opened my new office that morning, a small but sleek space near the edge of downtown. The building was an old warehouse, but it had been converted into modern lofts and office spaces, with high ceilings and exposed brick. It felt like a place where people could make things happen, not just pretend to. The desk was clear, the view was perfect, and the coffee was exactly how I liked it. I had everything ready for my first official day, but the best part? The nameplate? It was simple. Polished wood, black lettering, and no fanfare. I ran my fingers over it one more time. Jordan Vega Consulting Sports Ethics and Agency Reform. It felt right, not just because it was a new beginning, but because it was mine, my vision, my mission. I had spent my entire life working for other people, constantly chasing approval. But here, in this office, I didn't need anyone's validation. I didn't need to be anybody's sidekick anymore. Elise came in a few hours later, wearing a grin like she'd just won the lottery. "You look like $1,000,000, Joe." "I feel like it," I said, stepping back to admire the space. "It's small, but it's mine. "You're going to crush it," she said, pulling up a chair and sitting. She raised her coffee cup to me. "To starting over." "To doing it right," I replied. The door chimed as someone entered. A client. My first one. I straightened, taking a deep breath. Elise shot me a wink. "You got this." I did. I walked to the door and greeted the client with a firm handshake. My pulse steady, my mind clear. We sat down, started discussing their needs, their goals. Things that would change the game, just like I had always dreamed. And as I listened, I thought about the mess my family had made of my life. How they thought they could erase me, replace me, lock me out of my own story. But they hadn't counted on one thing. That I'd rise from the silence. The flower delivery arrived just as I finished my second meeting of the day. 2 white orchids, tied with a simple ribbon. No note, just a small card. For the architect behind the curtain. "May the spotlight finally face you," I smiled, setting the flowers on my desk. I wasn't sure who had sent them. Maybe it didn't matter. I wasn't looking for recognition anymore. I had built this. I had made it happen, and it was just the beginning. I sat back, my hands folded on the desk, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace. I opened the laptop and started typing, the first words of my memoir already forming. I was never a ghost, just the unacknowledged heartbeat of an empire built on silence. The story was mine to tell. No one could take that away, and I would make sure the world knew it.